Bobby Kotick is doing Bobby Kotick things again. And did Activision Blizzard just leak Dayz 2? Also, we've got more demos for you from Steam Next Fest, and finally, Battlebit Remastered is here.
Nick here, and if I may quote Bilbo, Battlefield costs twice as much as half of it deserves, and Battlebit costs half as much as double the amount I enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Josh, and on a scale of pregnant cow to Elmo, how well do you handle a hand in the ass?
My name is Andy, and you are watching Video Game Tango. Or listening to it.
Or listening.
Don't you fucking dare, Josh. You know, now this episode can't get monetized.
Oh, no.
It's because I cussed, not because you tried to vape.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So, hey, it's Video Game Tango. We're here to talk to you about video games.
We are here to talk about video games and video games.
Oh, that wasn't a failed noise floor?
Nope, no, we're going.
Wow.
Here we
Are you
go.
serious?
Hello,
I would
everybody.
really, okay.
So we're here making mouth noises, thinking we were starting over.
I really did. All right, so guys, we're gonna lead off with a little Activision Blizzard news.
Weird.
Wait, what?
Weird.
Yeah, I know. It's a little weird. It's something
Surprised
we've
Andy.
never done before. It actually it comes from a little bit of PlayStation here. Now in 2022, all the big boys of gaming met in Brussels to discuss how video games shall be played in the future.
I heard John Gaming himself was there.
John Gaming himself was there. And after John Gaming left, Bobby Kotick reached out to Jim Ryan to try and make a little side deal, just in case things didn't go down. Because in 2024, Activision Blizzard and Sony's PLA agreement will be up. So they were going to need to make a deal regardless of a Microsoft Activision Blizzard go through. Allegedly, Jim Ryan in private said to Kotick, "I don't give a shit about having a new deal. I just don't want your merger to go through."
Oh.
So totally, I mean, I get where he's coming from a little bit. He's the head of Sony. He's got to be ruthless when it comes to that. I get that. I get that.
His EP.
Exactly. Now, PlayStation, Jim Ryan, Bobby Kotick, these guys have had a 20-year-long, multi-billion-dollar spanning relationship. So it's not like private relations and private deals haven't been offered before. I think Sony is currently writing out some sort of exclusive deal now. So that's the one that's ending in 2024. Now, because the FCC is looking at this, Jim Ryan was, I think, is in court now doing a deposition, or was recently. And Kotick's, Microsoft's lawyers had a little bit of questions here. So I'm going to read something from Jim Ryan and the Microsoft lawyer, Beth Wilkinson. So the question from Wilkinson is, did Kotick say he would stay afterwards and talk about negotiating a deal? Jim Ryan answered, he said he was interested in doing a deal. I told him that I thought the transaction between Microsoft and Activision Blizzard was anti-competitive, and I hoped regulators would block it. My comment was specifically in the context. I think Kotick wanted to cover himself in negotiating a deal with PlayStation in the event the deal does not go through. Which is like, just, boy, does that just have political answer written all over it. So elsewhere in the testimony, Ryan said that he believed that Microsoft would use the Call of Duty and other Activision games to harm PlayStation. He also confirmed, now because we've been talking about it, Activision Blizzard, that Call of Duty deal, right? We've been talking about, well, how forward they are in sharing this. Other Activision Blizzard games aren't actually included in the deal, according to Jim Ryan. Overwatch 2 is not included in the game. Many of Activision Blizzard's other popular titles are not included in this 10-year deal. It's simply a Call of Duty deal.
Yeah.
Which is kind of sneaky. If we're being, that's a little sneaky. I'm sure they would be willing to make a deal. Maybe, I don't know. I shouldn't answer for them because we have no idea. But I mean, we've been pretty forward with Microsoft is, hey, they're doing the right thing here. They're throwing 10-year deal all around. They're throwing out this library deal. But if they're not including all the games in that 10-year deal, I mean, I guess it didn't specifically say they were. I don't know. It feels sneaky after reading that, you know?
In most of the deals, they did actually specify Call of Duty.
It is just specifically. I guess I just maybe it was just me that was putting, it's obviously all the games because it's Call of Duty, it's everything, right? Why wouldn't it? I don't know. Yeah.
No, I mean, Call of Duty is one of their big breadwinners, and especially when it comes to console and streaming, it's huge.
That's the huge one. So if they're going with that one, why wouldn't Overwatch just go too? Why wouldn't? Yeah, like why? I never even thought, honestly, I guess, of the other games. I suppose in the deal was just going to be good for a lot of stuff, but that is not the case there. So he wanted a private deal, man. This guy, he's always Bobby Kotick covering his ass every which way.
It's Kotick's world, man.
It's Kotick's world.
we just live here, you know. Well, on the heels of your Activision Blizzard news, this is a little bit related in that, you know, during all of these disputes and court filings, there's bound to be a little bit of crossfire because a lot of these companies make deals with each other regularly, such as, like, I don't know, Bohemia Interactive.
Wow. Did they get caught up in the crossfire?
Well, a little bit in that court documents have shown now what their development cycle looks like, or what their plans for development cycle look like since 2018 and in the near future. One thing that really popped up,
bubbled to the top.
It shook my bits.
His jits were shook.
My jits were shook.
By Lord.
Is that some of the court documents say in plain English that they are currently working on Arma Reforged, Arma 4, and Dayz 2.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's twice as many Dayz's.
God, yes. So what I'm hoping is that Bohemia's been working on their latest engine. Arma Reforged came out and it works mostly now. You know, they've made a lot of progress on this engine.
They reforged it. They didn't say they reforged it correctly.
Right.
Just that they reforged it.
Well, when it launched, people couldn't play, right? Like even the menus were broken. Now at this point, there are map makers making playable maps. It seems to be mostly working. It's still a buggy mess, right? But that's to be expected.
That's part of its
with
charm.
A relatively small engine development team, and especially with the scope of the games that are Arma, you know, realistic military sim. I can imagine making an engine for that is a feat. But to see that Dayz 2 is potentially in the pipeline when the entire Dayz sphere argues amongst each other whether it's even a thought by developers, seeing that it's actually it is a thought, and they have a development team working on Arma Reforged, Arma 4, and Dayz is cool.
That is very sweet.
I don't know, but now my expectations are tempered. Like Dayz 2 for me is still like a possibility. I'm not looking at this like it's a for sure thing, but
well, I mean, wasn't Dayz itself an Arma 2?
Originally, yeah. So it was an Arma 2 mod,
right? So the
Arma 2 mod made by Dean Hall. Dean Hall went on to do other things, and Bohemia Interactive took over the Dayz licensing, created Dayz standalone. That's the version that we have all enjoyed, you know, to some degree or another. And now it looks like they may be thinking about working on a second one. Now, I have to assume
Dave Hall. How crazy would it be if he was going to be involved in the Dayz 2 project?
He's probably not at all.
I mean, man, that'd be something.
He's a pretty public figure on Twitter, and I think like if I just leaks would have happened prior to this because Dean Hall he did his work and now he does his thing.
Oh shit!
The reason he left, the reason he stopped working on the DayZ mod at all was to climb Mount Everest. He was like, I have to devote my life to the things that I'm gonna do from now on. I'm gonna climb Everest, and that's what he did. So, yeah, no, probably not Dean Hall, but to see the Bohemia is even it's even written somewhere as far as their development plans go.
Yeah, it's in court filings, man.
Yeah,
like that's
cool
legit. That's legit.
Cool to see.
They legally have to make the game now.
Yeah, they have to.
Well, now that we've talked about it, yes, DayZ 2 is going to happen. And on that, we want to go back to Steam Next Fest. We promised that we talk about more demos this week, and Nick and I have definitely been looking at some demos.
I played one.
He did.
Yep.
I played one more. I'm sorry.
I
failed.
for effort.
C for D plus for execution. I showed up. That's all I get.
I showed up.
What is first up on the docket?
You've got Luna Abyss.
I got Luna Abyss. So I had a really good video I watched a while back about an analogy for Scorn. Scorn was a game that I played that was more of an art piece than anything. And the guy analogized the feeling of Scorn to that of being a cow. So imagine you're some heifer, some beefsteak, and you're born and raised in a slaughterhouse environment, and you go through your whole life and you're eventually slaughtered. The cow at some point might understand that something's wrong as they're surrounded by millions of their brethren all waiting to be killed by industrial machinery. But imagine now that that cow had some semblance of sentience, of sapience, of the ability to comprehend the churning macabre machine it is in, this cycle of slaughter, and how terrifying that would be. Scorn was that for humans, right? Having that ability to see that the machinery and the machinations around you exist so outside of your consideration for your well-being that it was immensely scary. Luna Abyss is similar in vibe, not in gore or in, sheer violence, but the stylistic design of the architecture is what screamed that to me. So Luna Abyss plays a bit like a Metroidvania. It's a first-person shooter. The enemies, at least from the demo, fought very much in a bullet hell style thing where they fill the screen with shots and you have to dodge them. There wasn't anything majorly new or novel about the gameplay, but you find yourself, especially in a few of these clips, you're entirely inside throughout the demo. So these old outside clips I haven't seen, but stuff like this, where these walls extend in the abyss, they're tilted 15, 30, 45 degrees, so everything feels and looks topsy-turvy. The pipes and cabling running through the walls are like 40 feet wide, and you feel literally like an ant caught in a Cummins diesel engine, right? And I really, really, really like the vibe of the game. The general storyline is you're some kind of criminal who has been awakened inside of a clone body to essentially do tasks in this abyss. There's some kind of half real jelly symbiote, half AI ghost in the machine that's fucking with things, and you need to go fix the problems it's causing. It was a short demo, and again, it played a bit like a Metroidvania. I found 2 guns out of a potential 4. I missed like 12 of the 13 secrets because I was just playing through the obvious path that you need to go through. But I really, really, really liked what they did with the aesthetics of the demo. One thing, it's not as much noticeable in this trailer, but in the game, the entire color gradient ranged from red to black.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing like any colors other than red, white, gray, and black, which was an interesting choice. Clearly there were some there, but those were very dominant, and you can see it here in the trailer. So I liked the angle they were taking. The story seems a little neat. And this might be one of those games I play through just to take in the vibes, because they have some really cool ideas when it comes to set and setting.
I would say, yeah, dude, the aesthetics, the setting of the game looks really dark, really creepy.
They just showed it there. There's some like giant fan room that's clearly just like a wind tunnel that people have set up holy candles in a religious site in, because there's some kind of, again, ghost in the machine, semi-religious aspect to this goop entity that's taking over things and corrupting things. So the idea of like some kind of sentient tribe living out its life inside what amounts to a manifold within a larger industrial planet-sized machine is pretty neat. So
Super
I
cool.
like that.
I've got another game to talk about.
Do you? I thought we were done.
No, man.
Okay.
We're keeping going. Now, what I've got here is actually footage from myself playing. So let me resize that for our live audience here real quick. I played a little game called Viewfinder. Now, this game, I kind of actually made fun of it when we were reviewing trailers previously. I think this was shown on like Summer Game Fest.
I think I remember us cracking jokes about it actually.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, cool, shitty Portal. Well, it turns out that's kind of what it is, but that's not a bad thing. So when I mean shitty is it doesn't have the level of humor or narrative that the Portal games had.
It's just Sam's Choice Portal or Kirkland brand Portal.
I wouldn't even say that. It is a different thing. It's Portal in that it's a unique take on a puzzle game. I almost said physics puzzle, but it's not quite that. It does have an element of physics involved in it, but the meat of this game is that you find yourself in this weird kind of torn asunder playscape. And I think based on the demo, you don't get a ton of narrative with the demo. I think based on the demo, you're trying to escape it. You have somebody helping you through like intercom or some kind of radio two-way.
Man in the chair.
Yeah, helping you out and guiding you through the first part of at least the demo. And I assume there's going to be some narrative shared between you and this man in the chair. Throughout the story, because you do get little bits and pieces here of what is essentially a story.
Oh,
now, yeah, what Josh is seeing for the first time is you find Polaroids in the game, and when you find these Polaroids, you can put them in front of your face, and with the touch of a button, that becomes where you head to. It's really hard to explain in words exactly how this works. But the scene that you put forward in this Polaroid is the scene that you are about to traverse. Whoa. It goes from a 2D image to a 3D plane of play. Now, not only is that a puzzle in and of itself, but you also have regular puzzle elements in that what they showed in the demo is the ability to go from one map to the next through teleporters. Some of these teleporters have to be powered. Some of them don't. And the amount of power they require ranges. It's between 1 and 3 in the demo at least. And in order to fulfill those charges, you have to find batteries throughout the map. Now, some maps don't even have the required amount of batteries. You will find them in photos that you then place on the map and traverse through. In one instance, I was looking for a third battery that I could not find. And this is, an early playthrough, so I didn't quite understand that I needed to effectively generate the new battery by taking a photo of where the battery had been and then placing the photo on the scene, grabbing the battery out of the scene that I had just placed, and then placing it on the pedestal to take the portal to the next area. So really cool
Jesus
game
Christ.
mechanics. Yeah.
It's like a mind fuck watching this thing.
You're watching the very early first few minutes, and this is my playthrough, my third one. I had some issues with capture and stuff, so this is I'm kind of speed running it at this point. It took me a lot more work to figure out these puzzles initially. The video only ends up being 11 minutes. My first playthrough was probably about 30 minutes. So I'm effectively speed running. But what I do have in this video that I didn't have in the previous captures is what happens later. So initially, in the first few levels, you're finding Polaroids to place in the map to become part of the map. In later versions of the levels, you get to like level 6 or 7, and the game stops and tells you fast forwarding for the demo. So you're essentially you're skipping some levels and then going ahead in the demo to further in the game so they can show you some more game mechanics. And when they do that, they give you a Polaroid camera. So now not only are there like Polaroids out available on the map that allow you to change the map,
but you can take
take pictures, which then totally changes the gameplay dynamic, because now you're taking photos in the expectation that you need to be able to use those photos in order to manipulate. Yeah. So where this is essentially like, early game where it is just placing photos that have already been taken and they have clear use on the map, you're now having to figure out how to place the photos in which to make them usable. Generate
your own terrain.
Totally. So what's on screen right now is it also shows like kind of the power of this engine. It's showing one of them. You go from like essentially a realistic map into a hand-drawn pencil map that you can later grab another Polaroid that puts you in essentially a painting map. And then another one that puts you in a cartoon map.
Like pointillism to clip art.
Yeah. And just the amount of work that must have gone into the art to create this game.
Is phenomenal.
Yeah. The amount of work that they had, like the engine is ultra impressive. I can't this is a concept that my brain couldn't fathom until I saw it.
Yeah.
And honestly, even seeing it in a trailer did not do it justice.
Good luck any other fucking puzzle game, dude. Like, what the shit?
Yeah, I just jumped into a fucking Quake clone in this playthrough. It's got a really cool variety of, I wouldn't even call it a variety of puzzles because the puzzles are all the same, but the means in which you achieve.
It's like Portal in that regard.
Yes.
Yeah, it's unique.
Tripping Josh out.
Yeah, like I'm boggled.
Every new map, I was tripped out because it showed me a new mechanic, and not only a new mechanic, but new and different art styles. And the narrator during these portions where I'm viewing the different art styles, the hand drawn, the painted, the cartoon art styles, while I'm experiencing that, the narrator is talking over a megaphone about how they achieved these art styles and how they drew them for each other. And it's really neat to get like little bits of what are essentially a story as you're going through it as well, because that also gives you little hints as to how you're supposed to complete the puzzle without a narrator straight up telling you how to complete the puzzle. Really, really interesting. I kind of poo-pooed this when we watched the trailer initially a couple months ago. For me, this, I think when the full game comes out, is an immediate buy.
Yeah, this has got some very wise novelty choices.
I would already pay $15 for the demo experience that I had.
Yeah.
Like really, at the end of the day, this is so unique. I've never seen this concept, and to see something this fundamentally unique is really cool. And to come from a studio that I unfortunately I forgot the name of.
I was gonna say this. I think this might be the same developers who made that Perspective game.
I could see that. Yeah.
What is this one game called?
Viewfinder.
Okay. So there was a game where Perspective. There's an old British show where there's a skit about a pastor telling a guy the difference between a tiny cow, he's got a little plastic cow in his hand, and a far away cow, which is the cow outside, but they're the same size that the guy can't figure out perspective. So he made a game where like you have a chess piece, and if you bring it up close to your player's vision, the chess piece is suddenly massive.
Yes, I remember that.
So this is Sad Owl Games that made Viewfinder. And I wonder if Perspective, that's not the same game. I don't know, I'll have to look it up later.
Sure.
But yes, Superliminal.
Okay.
Is the people who made that, and liminal developer is Pillow Castle. So not the same people, but general idea, and that they have a very novel take on perspective and whatnot. Totally. The ability to make your own, like this would have been a fun, nice game if all the Polaroids were given to you, but the ability to take your own pictures, I think that's what sets it over the top.
Now, so we're watching my gameplay here right now, and the interesting thing is I had already completed this level when trying to capture the gameplay earlier for the footage that didn't end up working out. And now I'm struggling to do essentially the same, or what I remember doing in my previous playthrough. So I figured it out in a different way, and it just totally works. You'll see here coming up shortly. I'll skip ahead because I don't want to talk about this game too long. But you'll see here that I come up with a completely weird way to figure out this puzzle. You guys can see it says the teleporter was destroyed. If you destroy the teleporter, you
can't leave.
You can't leave. So the game, I haven't mentioned this yet, has a rewind effect that is another, a mechanic to figuring out these puzzles. So I figured, okay, I need to use perspective here. So I made myself a ramp poorly by looking at the floor and taking a picture of it. Yeah. So, God, it's. I know for you audio listeners, this is going to be really hard to visualize.
Difficult.
I really highly suggest Viewfinder is still available. I checked it out. It's still available with a demo on Steam right now. I would go check that out immediately. The system requirements are bizarrely high. That's why I had issues with the capture. It wouldn't allow me to turn VSync on, which actually wouldn't have done anything, but it didn't have an FPS limiter. So I was getting like 2,000 frames per second here. In the game. And that wasn't allowing my graphics card enough headroom to get a good capture going. So it is from a small developer. And those are the kinds of issues, unfortunately, that you have to have, or that you have sometimes with small developers. So I'm hoping that's one thing that they can do to it. But as far as gameplay goes, I cannot more highly suggest you check something out. I don't know what the final price of the game is. It doesn't say on the Steam store page. So, I don't know that I would recommend this game necessarily at like $60, but get it on sale. Yeah, and Nick just saw me figure out a puzzle. I left a battery behind, so how am I going to figure that out?
I need another battery. Let me just take a picture of
I'll
one.
just take a picture of the battery and put it right above the platform and drop it down.
Out. Holy
awesome.
smokes.
So you guys got to see that. I highly suggest you check it out. It's a very visual game for sure. So check out Viewfinder. I had an incredible time just with the demo, and I think the full game, especially if they have even more mechanics to go through, is going to be pretty fucking incredible.
Pretty neat. So is this Norland next
This
up on the
is
docket?
Norland, sir.
Okay. So this Steam Next Fest had roughly 10,000 city management 4X Lite games. I still have a good 10 downloaded that I want to give a shot. But this was one of 3 I got to that was probably the best. It's interesting. So Norland, is there a subtitle there?
Nope, just Norland.
Just Norland, okay. So this is kind of the baby between RimWorld and Crusader Kings. The general game plays quite a bit like RimWorld, but then there's an overworld map where you can do politicking, aka this kind of stuff you do in Crusader Kings, where you're marrying off people and you're plotting assassinations and you're bribing an heir to the throne to try to overthrow his father so that you can weaken their army. Very interesting take on essentially a fantasy medieval version of a colony management storytelling game. And it bills itself as such. It says it's the headline was that it's a storytelling game, much like RimWorld. So with these kinds of games, they are not highly conducive to short demos because there are a million fiddly bits. Every character has stats and wants and opinions and things they like and people they like and people they don't like. You're worrying about job management and resource management and being efficient and pathing and all that stuff. And the tutorial does a pretty good job. It has a system that I believe Old World developed, which I really, really like for games like this, where if you hover over something and you get a pop-up tooltip, you can set the time. I think it defaults to 2 seconds, where if you wait long enough, it freezes. And then you can hover over that tooltip, and any keywords in there you can hover over. And you can essentially do multiple tabs. So you're like, okay, well, how does happiness work? And happiness is based off how much food they have available. And you're like, okay, well, how do I get food? So you continue to hover over food. So there's no need for like an encyclopedia necessarily or some kind of help page, because any particular keyword or thing that you don't understand, you can just hover over until you figure it out. But it was nice. I hired mercenaries to go rescue my wife, who was captured by slavers. I got beer up and running so that my people could be happy. You have an internal economy, so you have to like pay your serfs and your peasants, and you can choose how much things cost. And in the trailer here, we're watching executions and sermons being given, and it looked quite well fleshed out. This game feels about 80 to 90% done, which is nice to see with games like this, because very often they're more proof of concept than anything.
Yeah.
There are a dime a dozen 4X management games that never get past the halfway mark. So it was good to see that this game had quite a bit of polish to it already. User interface was pretty solid overall, like B plus A minus demo from what I played. But again, there's only so deep you can get into these when you only have an hour and a half to really test things out. So there might have been some more interesting Forex management games. If I do happen to play one, I will bring it up next week. But as it stands, this was probably the most interesting one that has legs out of those that I found.
Excellent. It looks solid.
I was gonna say, it definitely has a rim worldy kind of feel, right down to the pawns and everything. So definitely has a rim worldy kind of feel.
Yeah. And trying to get rim world to be like in a medieval setting requires hundreds of mods and a lot of tinkering, and it still kind of runs scuffed. So to have a game set up to be medieval themed, but like RimWorld from the get-go is very nice.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Well, speaking of kind of half here, half there, we talked pretty at length about a game called Necess not long ago.
Oh yeah.
Necess.
We had a blast because it was essentially, I mean, I wouldn't call it an RPG, RPG-like, but like more of a sandbox RPG with some base building elements.
Yeah, it's like a Terraria light, a Minecraft light.
Yeah. Now, as you guys know, the way I play my games is I play as the action guy. So while you guys work on the base, I'm gonna go collect stuff and kill things.
Gotcha.
Like that's how our Valheim works. That's how Necess worked for us. I'm an explorer and a dungeoneer, and that's kind of what I find myself doing. So this game really speaks to me. It's called Hammerwatch 2. Thank you.
Yes.
Man, I want to call it everything but its actual name.
Hammer time.
Because there's Hammerfall, Overwatch. There's just too many watches and hammers happening right now.
Vila has a hammer.
But Hammerwatch 2. Now, I never played the first one. Nick, you said you had played the first one. Yeah, and enjoyed it.
I picked it up one day. It was like
your
$3.
Well-
and it was fantastic.
Well, I've not played the sequel, and good God am I sold. So I'm going to skip a little bit in here for the watchers and get right into the gameplay. For everybody listening, though, this is a top-down action RPG, Diablo-esque in that way, but a little bit more towards the RPG portion of it than the action. Now, there is still plenty of action to be had here. I actually found the spellcasting and the melee and ranged combat to be very fun. It's very simple. It's left click to swing your sword. It's right click to draw your ranged weapon. I played the ranger in particular. The longer you hold it down to there's some fall off, but the longer you hold down your right click, the longer you wait, it's going to do more damage and your arrow will fly farther. He has a magic spell too that slows enemies and does a little bit of AoE damage to them while they're running through it. I didn't get to play the wizard. Those are the two classes available for the demo. But I did get to play this game for like almost 3 hours. And I did not reach the end of the demo. So I'm still really looking forward to going back and playing through the rest of this demo.
Awesome.
Some things to note. The combat is really fast paced and it is unforgiving. It is really easy to die in this game. The only qualms that I had, because I'm going to gush about this game for the rest of my discussion here, the only qualms that I had is the button layout. I'm not sure how to use potions still. Those seem relatively important, but I learned how to equip them through another menu that I found, but I never learned how to use them quickly. So I never found out how to bind them. I'm hoping you can do that. I'm still not sure that you can. Unfortunately, that wasn't part of the tutorial. As far as tutorial, the tutorial is really light. It tells you essentially your movement buttons and your attack buttons. There is an inventory and journal system here that is relatively complex. A character sheet that's relatively complex. More stats than you would see in your typical action RPG, which is, I think that's a good thing. Because I think it really adds to player agency, especially since this game is multiplayer. So you can really dive deep into, if you want to be the super fast, runs around and does the discovery guy in dungeons with your friends, you can totally do that. Game supports up to 4 players.
Cool.
And yeah, I think we need to jump into this like right away. I had a blast. The combat is fun. It's simple, but fun and rewarding. It doesn't feel grindy. I'm expecting a demo experience here, right? So about half an hour in, I find a little pirate cove. Pirate cove leads to a pirate dungeon. I figured, okay, well, I'll do this pirate dungeon real quick before jumping into some of the quests that I had in the overworld. So I jump into this pirate dungeon. That's actually what's happening right now on screen. I jump into this pirate dungeon, and I expect like a few rooms and a boss, clear the dungeon, good to go on starting island, especially in a demo. No, I was in this dungeon for like 2 hours, and I still have not completed it. So I'm really looking forward to going back and finishing the pirate dungeon. During my gameplay, I also found a wolf dungeon that was like impossibly hard for me to finish. So I feel like that's dungeon number 2, and I really need to finish number 1 before I go on to number 2. So I felt a little bit out leveled when I checked out the wolf dungeon, but yeah, I spent easily an hour and a half in this dungeon and didn't reach all of it. I did find the boss, died to him pretty much immediately. But yeah, no, there was still plenty of dungeon to be explored. I still have the eastern portion of the dungeon to explore. So there's like nearly another half. And that was like exploring, that was hard exploration. I was dedicated to clearing this dungeon, and to think that this is just one dungeon of what is supposed to be many, because there's like an entire world map outside of this starting area. To think that you could have this experience many more times is a good thing. I have no real complaints other than the UI seems a little bit fiddly. This is a great action RPG. Simple to like, relatively easy to get into, but skill ceiling I imagine is going to be relatively high end game, and I cannot.
Crazy good art too.
Oh yeah, the pixel art is fantastic.
Pixel art is phenomenal.
Yeah. It seems like there's going to be a pretty rich story. I didn't get a whole lot of that in the demo, but I did get flashes of the story in the beginning. So they give you a cinematic that tells you what's been going on up until now, and it does seem that you will continue that story as soon as you leave the starter island. Yeah.
What I remember the first one, because I looked it up, it was multiplayer. I never did play it multiplayer. These come from a long line of what we now call action RPGs that didn't necessarily used to be as swarming with mobs as like Diablo had.
Yeah.
It brings to mind Escalon of Basilisk Games or the Avernum games from Spiderweb Software. It's a little bit of everything. Like you can see Terraria in this, you can see Minecraft in this, you can see Zelda in it, you can see Diablo in it. Because you're one character, a hero that in a game that, usually relies pretty heavily on long play experience, 60 hours minimum. Some of these games, especially like the Spiderweb Software runs, run hundreds of hours of quests and narrative, giant expansive worlds. And yeah, you have unique items and spells, and it's very much like a solo D&D kind of replication, right? So I did like the first one. I don't think it was maybe as fleshed out as this one sounds like it might become. So that's good to know. And knowing that the first one had multiplayer gives me hope that this one, they've done work on it already. They know how to do multiplayer. Yeah. Because these kind of games it brings it to another level when you can play it with other people. You know, this looks like what kind of Necess wished it was.
Yes, that's my thinking there.
Necess did some unique things, but it was a little bare bones on content. So it's good to see.
Now Necess was a single developer, so we have to give. We love Necess. Yeah, so we're not talking.
It was very, very entertaining.
Man, 4 buddies exploring a dungeon, a ranger, a wizard, a cleric. Are we playing Gauntlet?
Yeah.
Are we playing Gauntlet?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Some things to note before we go to the next game is quests they have a time limit, or at least it does warn you of a time limit for most quests. So completing them in timely fashion is important. Quests will only be available for a little while. What happened to me is after I finished my first or second run of this dungeon, because I do die a few times in the pirate dungeon. But in my second or third attempt of the pirate dungeon, I ended up going back over to the overworld and back on the island. And a woman that I had taken a quest for previously who wanted 20 flowers to make a potion, I found her picking those flowers, and she said something to the effect of like, never mind, or don't worry about it. When I approached her. Yeah, so the quest went to a failed quest log, and I had taken too much time.
That's fun.
So interesting. I lost out on some cool gauntlets that I was supposed to be getting from her and some potions, but c'est la vie. I guess I need to grind the pirate dungeon a little bit more to get those. Because there's a whole equipment system that I didn't talk about. There's a lot to talk about here. I think you should check it out. It is still also available. Actually, most of the demos from Next Fest are still available.
Yeah, minus the multiplayer ones. Some of the multiplayer ones are going past the limit, but it seemed like a lot of them stopped.
And then some came out during Next Fest, and so not all of those have demos available. But a lot of the games that we're talking about now have demos available still. They were just, Steam Next Fest is where they really put them at the forefront. So I highly recommend checking it out. See if it's something for you and a few buddies that you could get into. I highly recommend it just based on the few hours that I've been able to play, because I'm totally ready to play some more.
What is up next?
Up next, you have Remore.
Remore, which one was it? This was, okay, yes. Remore, in the vein of turn-based, grid-based XCOM likes. Say that 5 times fast. No. Remore, Infested Kingdom. General plot is medieval times, and bad things happen, and zombies attack, and the Crown's knights are nowhere to be seen, and everyone gets overrun, and you are the sole survivor of your village. So you go out and you find some people to try to survive with, kind of, Walking Dead style. But the gameplay is very much like XCOM. So highly tactical and strategic battles where the odds are stacked against you. You have to use your resources very efficiently. You have to position yourself extremely immaculately, control your enemies, limit what they can do. And in between, you have a darker dungeon style, kind of XCOM style break, where you can manage what remaining food you have to try to keep your people fed and get minor bonuses, break down your old broken weapons and try to craft new ones once you found the blacksmith. And the demo was on rails. There was 3 missions. And I really, really, really liked it up until the end. I felt like I'd made some good choices. It was really satisfying to combo my guys' passive abilities to get free attacks and maneuver enemies in the right way. The game was pretty lenient with action points. I felt like I had quite a bit of options every turn for each character, and it wasn't limited to like one action. You had weapon points to do actions with whatever weapon you had equipped, which changes what skills you have. You had movement points, which were obviously for moving, but also to do movement-related things like shoulder tackling people or swapping positions with an ally to pull them out of the line of combat. So our friend watched me play it, got pretty well, and we got to the last battle, and there were some zombies in particular that were explodey boys. When they died, they did heavy damage in an area around them, and if they collided with anybody, they would immediately explode. It's clearly supposed to be a difficult battle, but that's the battle in particular right there. But I gave it 3-4 attempts, and I could not complete it without of my guys dying. I assume it wasn't the end of the demo. I think they expected you to die because it didn't give me a splash screen or anything. Maybe you just need some tuning. But it did seem like weapon effects like stunning enemies or applying bleed effects or whatnot pale in comparison did literally just like pole arms that allow you to push things away from you, because that would have made things a lot easier. So yeah, I was playing on normal. I mean, there was a hard. I can only imagine what that would have been like.
Yeah.
So maybe the game's just brutal in its difficulty, and it wants you to replay levels over and over again until you get it just right. I hate that kind of shit. So hopefully this was just a badly tuned demo level. But other than that last little kerfuffle there, everything I really liked about it. It had pretty cool just aesthetics and vibes. I think they did the art well. And I liked, I played a million XCOM likes, and this one was very solid. So
I like the flavoring of it, the medieval zombie stuff.
It's kind of like a medieval Walking Dead.
I like that. That's fun flavoring, and the art definitely looked really cool. So
yeah,
it looks like fun.
Yeah, and that's the theme of these demos is like, man, really good art from all of them. We had what was the star?
Sea of Swords and Stars.
Yes. Oh man, that one.
If the price point is right on some of these games, like a lot of these are, I think we each had a couple of instant pickups.
Yeah, big time. So I didn't play as many demos as I wanted to. I had some computer issues this week. Every time I tried to download a demo, it would say it was license _ available every time I tried to download a demo. So yeah, I did a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of reading on Reddits and forums and people with similar issues, but no fixes, talking about submitting tickets to Steam or to Valve. And I'm thinking, okay, like, what the fuck is going? Did my account get flagged? Am I like VAC banned? Like, what's happening here? So I was really worried about my account. Turns out that the SSD that I was using had failed, like had a smart failure. So it was able to read some information from my SSD, but it wasn't able to write to the SSD anymore. So once I got that figured out, I was able to play some demos. I didn't actually figure it out until Dayz, because I use a third-party launcher, told me that the file path could not be found. It gave me an error that made sense to my brain. So I said,
Gotcha.
oh, okay, well,
I know what that is.
Shit, my SSD isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So figured that out, because I do have like an exclusive game SSD. I'm gonna have to fix that at some point, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. But one game that I would have definitely really liked to play is the next one you're gonna be talking about, Nick.
Yeah, I had a similar boat. I had got through maybe 7-8 demos in total, but between being gone half the weekend, the Starship Troopers Extermination update, the Deep Rock Galactic new season, I was able to only play like a couple demos a night. On top of that, after a video of this next game cropped up on my feed, I was like, oh, my brother's going to love this. I walked into his room to show him, and he was playing it. I immediately picked it up because I just gotten paid. And we've had a hoot so far. So this next game is Battlebit Remastered. It is not a part of the Steam Demo Next Fest. It's apparently a overhauled version, or we're guessing, of a game that's been out a while. If you're watching video,
It's
hold your
Lego
horses.
America's Army.
Hold your horses. It looks like Roblox. It looks like Roblox 1.2, like a little bit better. What's important is a few things. One, sports up to 254 players per match, right? That's 127 per team.
It's crazy.
They have smaller maps. Two, it runs like butter. The video I was watching, I was playing on a good gaming rig. He never went below 240 frames a second, ever. There's almost no network lag. It runs amazing, and it plays exactly like Battlefield.
Yeah.
If you love Battlefield, if you want more Battlefield, but you don't want to play Battlefield because the newer ones don't have the same charm the old ones did, this is it, right? You've got tank columns, you've got helicopters, you've got people blaring Fortunate Son as they're carrying people. You get to rappel out of the planes. Fully destructible terrain. I was going to revive my brother, and a fucking giant building fell on top of me. There's squad commands. There's capture the flag. There's pushing objectives. There's straight team deathmatch. You can play matches with and without vehicles. There's nighttime and daytime maps. A full meta progression of unlocking stuff for the different classes, of which there's like 6. It's very much Battlefield, and if it doesn't bother you that it looks blocky, this is like the perfect Battlefield experience. And it's $15.
I was gonna say, what's the price on this bad boy?
It's $15, and like I said, it has been running amazingly smooth. I was playing with my brother and like 3 or 4 of his friends, and it's fun. The guns feel very good and real. They're not easy, no recoil rifles. They have all of the real guns with the attachments and the ACOGs and the Picatinis and all that. The vehicles, we got MRAPs and main battle tanks and APC armored carriers and all that. The helicopters have miniguns on them, which are fun. Snipers have lens flares.
And physics.
There's bullet drop. It's very, very, very satisfying.
Oh man, that destructible environment.
Being able to roll
fun.
around a train and there's a bunch of dudes in a building and they start popping shots, you just blow up the building.
Yeah.
Be like, no, I'm telling you no. right? Some of the maps favor snipers more than others. Some of the maps are a little imbalanced. But what's nice is after every match, they ask you, did you like this map or not? And if you say no, they give you a list of 20 things that you could possibly not like about the map. And you just check mark each one that you didn't like. One side has better spawns. One side has better cover. This map has too much, light in the sight for snipers. This map is too dominated by vehicles, such and such. So they're clearly wanting player input on their map design and that stuff like that. It got up to, I think, 30,000 concurrent players like a few days after release, and the servers are fine. I believe it's a 3-man team from what I remember. It's just overall extremely impressive to not only have a 64 player base maps or 128, but what amounts to 256 is right. It's 254. And yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of like if you like PlanetSide but don't want to have to play PlanetSide, this is it. And again, $15, and this is why I keep harping on indie games, man.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to pay $90 to the next Battlefield or Call of Duty if you want a good shooter experience.
Yeah, and if you're a Battlefield or Call of Duty player and like you have a hard time running those on your PC, just pick a Battlebit, dude.
Yeah, Battlebit. I mean, your rifles, you can get an angled scope, so you can have a primary scope and then tilt your rifle to use like an iron sight or a reflex. It's things like that. When you reload, you actually take a second clip out, and however many bullets you have left in the previous clip are still there, and you can combine your mags if you have time to try to make your bullets efficient, right? You can hold H to check your mags and see if there's bullets in it. It's quite realistic in a lot of ways. It just happens to look like Roblox, right? Yeah. But thanks to that, because the graphics are so low, everything else just runs perfectly amazing. Yeah. So,
and what's interesting, I was telling you guys briefly about this earlier, is I follow the Dayz crowd, which is the Tarkov crowd. They're the Arma crowd. They're the Milsim crowd. Yeah. And this is the game, other than Dark and Darker, that they are looking at, and this is the holy grail of realism for some of these players. And that's true. I mean, other than its graphics, it's a fairly realistic. It's more arcadey than something like Tarkov, but like. Not by a whole lot. The only thing that makes it a little bit more arcadey is the sheer amount of players on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. That's really what that lends more towards the battlefieldness than Tarkov. But that's about it, man. Like,
it also costs a quarter of what Tarkov costs.
Right, right, and you can get it through Steam Launcher. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all good things from what I've heard about BattleBit.
Fancy. I mean, like, that's neat. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, you guys are welcome to pick it up if you do.
Totally going to. Absolutely going to. Tomorrow's payday. Let's play some BattleBit tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So, guys, that's all the games we had to talk about today. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Really quick, I almost gave up on Starship Troopers, but they dropped a major update.
Oh, yeah.
Some things are wrong with it. Some things are amazing. Some things are off the wall bonkers. I'm glad to see they haven't given up on the game. I know it's only been out like a month and a half, but from what I gathered following their Twitter account, there was no contact between the devs and the players for like
we had serious doubts as to whether or not there was going to be anything.
I'm too used to like Ghost Ship being communication with the RG, right?
What I did like about their patch notes is they did list when it was like a
user suggested
fixes for their patch notes.
Gunner bug damage reduced, user suggested fix, stuff like that.
It does seem like they may not be communicative, but at least they're listening to their player base. So definitely. And it's good to see that they are working on it. That totally leads to. Like, I'm down to continue playing knowing that they're working on it. Personally speaking, I don't really want to burn out on it before it's closer to done. So that's why I've stayed away for a little bit. But with the new content, I'd be down to check it out again for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps it up for me.
All right, gentlemen. Josh?
We'll see you next week. That same tango time, same tango place.
That's right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.